This video is going to be incredibly negative because, to be honest, I'm actually upset. I had high hopes for Hellblade 2. The first game is such a unique mix of mythology and mental illness to make a story about a woman who's haunted both by inner demons and external demons. Whereas this sequel, Hellblade 2 Senua Saga, every single aspect of this is just an utter dumpster fire. The combat is paper thin, the puzzles are boring, and 95% of it is just walking in a straight line. You can beat this game in 5 hours. They have been working on it for 7 years. This is supposed to be the next big Xbox exclusive, and it is less than freaking 1 hour per year they worked on it. But let's actually break this down, both the goods and the bads, and try and figure out what the heck actually went wrong. Hi, my name is DreamcastGuy, and I hope you're having a good day. If you could, give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, first and foremost, let's start positive. We're going to be incredibly negative here in a bit, but just to begin with, I think you're going to immediately notice that graphically, this game is utterly insane. I mean, it seems like it's practically a tech demo for the Xbox, just showing how good the capabilities of Xbox development can be. I mean, the visuals, the facial features, the environmental textures. When it comes to just raw graphics, Hellblade 2 is truly a sight to behold. The problem is that once you begin to peel that surface back and actually test the mechanics for yourself, you're going to realize that this is a paper-thin dumpster fire. It's a travesty. It is just such a weirdly incomplete, unfinished dream. But let me say something very strange. Before we start to actually delve into the combats, the boss fights, the really strange dialogue, I'm going to say perhaps the most controversial statement I've ever put on this channel. Some games are kind of more interesting when they're terrible. This game sucks. I think Hellblade 2 is not worth your time. It's definitely not worth your money. Don't spend $50 for it. But I mean, if you already have Game Pass, install it and play the opening chapters. But I will say, it is sometimes fascinating to see such incredibly bad art. I think it is a testament to the fact that the developers had such a specific vision in mind. This mix of mythology and mental illness that worked so well in the first game kind of falls apart in the sequel because I feel like it lacks vision. So in Hellblade 2, we're once again playing as Senua, but this time in a far-off land. Slavers came to her place, they came to her village and started to capture people, and she purposefully got grabbed to figure out where they're coming from, where they're going, why they're even doing this. And she discovers that they're making a slave army to battle against a bunch of giants. And so Hellblade, because Senua is such a badass, she decides, okay, look, I'll kill the giants, I'll free these lands, and I'll break the slave trade. Now, this game looks good. It is something that when you're kind of just sitting there taking in the landscape, you can appreciate a lot of the interesting fidelity, a lot of the artistic choices made with the lighting, with the world map. I mean, every part of this does look good, but this is pretty much just an interactive movie. You don't really have any skill trees, there's no weapon upgrades, there's no depth, there's no replayability. You literally just walk from place to place and occasionally get stopped by incredibly simple puzzles. Literally a majority of the time you spend playing Hellblade 2 is just trying to find very basic puzzle solutions, looking for some sort of hidden rune to open up a door, collecting balls to put into altars that opens up the next pathway, or lighting a torch to make some sort of little ramp magically fizzle into existence. All the puzzles of this game suck. They are just so basic and paper thin. I literally fell asleep at one point. I don't want to admit that because I feel like it makes me look like I don't take my job seriously. I fell asleep playing this game. I literally had the controller in my hand staring at some stupid on-off switch tether puzzle where in this one room you have to keep turning on this torch that makes it where the room basically inverts. I fell asleep with the controller in my hand. 95% of this game is literally walking around and just looking at stuff. Now, if there was actually cool combat or big boss fights that might help break up the monotony, but I have a theory that this combat is fake. You do have a couple buttons. You have a fast attack, a strong attack, a dodge, and a parry. After a couple chapters, you unlock this special ability called Focus, where you can slow down time. But I don't actually think that's what's happening. The combat is an optical illusion. I purposely pressed the wrong buttons. I purposely missed parries and counters and stuff to see if the game would kill me. And a lot of times, I would still win fights. I would end up doing these like take down kill animations when I definitely wasn't trying to do that. Like, it's possible to get a game over, but this really is an interactive movie. It is something that's just trying to shuttle you to the next puzzle and past the next set piece. The singular moment of this entire 5-hour game that truly wowed me is the first major boss fight where you're going against one of the giants. You're trying to smash chains and dodge lava flow, and there's all these crescendos of music that keep flaring up. But I guess this almost feels like an antithesis of the Xbox formula. I mean, at this point, Microsoft is basically saying, we're not Sony. We're not just making over-the-shoulder narrative experiences. We're going to make stuff that has multiplayer or big combat or something that actually creates depth. And this feels not just paper thin, it feels completely lackluster. I have a saying I've mentioned before on the channel, which is better to be bad than boring. If your game is broken enough, it can still be memorable. Watching your save file get corrupted sucks, but if you're playing a game and you're completely just clipping through the wall or exploding stuff or breaking your stats to do 10 million damage, there is almost a memorableness to breaking a bad game. Whereas Hellblade 2, this game is just so boring, I don't feel like anybody is going to remember it. I feel like part of my issue with it is the fact that this story feels incredibly rushed. We wash up on the shores of these foreign lands and immediately are told to just start slaying giants and slaying Draugr, and then we do that, and then that's just the entire game. I mean, literally, pretty much right at the beginning of the game, they tell you what the next 5 hours is going to be. There's no deviations. I don't feel like there's any real grand reveals. There's a little bit of depth to some of the characters, but the whole time, it is such a one-note experience, and it kind of just feels a bit like a wet fart. I feel like I'm being accidentally disrespectful to the developers because I think, for better or for worse, this is exactly what they intended. There's of course games where you can feel like the studio is meddling or they got forced to make a project that they don't personally believe in, but for all the faults and flaws of Hellblade 2, you can tell this is exactly what they intended. They wanted to just make an incredibly short, weird, sort of visually impressive tech demo, and in that way, they are successful. All the characters are forgettable. I can't remember anybody's names. I mean, it's just a couple dudes and Senua wandering across some very beautiful beaches and countrysides, and then occasionally doing some very minor fast attack spam until you get to the next 40-minute long cutscene. Is the game terrible? Yeah. But is it the worst game of the year? I mean, probably not. There's definitely games that are more busted and more broken. But at this point, the paper-thin dialogue, the cyclical nature, a lot of the design of this has it where there's all these different voices talking to Senua, pushing her into that next fight or motivating her to continue onward. This is one of those games that I don't think that anybody would completely hate, but It's also not going to be anybody's favorite. It's just bland. And while occasionally there are cool, eye-catching moments, like a particular puzzle that I definitely enjoyed was there was this one where there's like a spirit and you keep basically lighting torches so that he can progress. Every time you light a torch, it like makes one of these ramps. And then later on, you're crossing those ramps and you realize you're the spirit. Ooh. And you know what? This isn't the like deepest, craziest mechanic, but it's effective. They set out with a very specific purpose and they did accomplish it. This game sucks. It's not fantastic, but it's definitely probably not going to go on to any like worst game of the year lists. If you already have an Xbox or you already have PC Game Pass, install it if you want. I mean, you'll beat it in one sitting very easily. Or if you don't have an Xbox, I mean, watch it on YouTube. There is rumors this is probably coming to PlayStation 5. If you watch this video in the future and it's on PS5, probably don't buy it. This is definitely not worth the $50. And at this point, I don't even really know if it's worth installing on Game Pass. But we have heard some good and some bad. Let's go over to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Hellblade 2 Senua Saga a 4 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching that video, gamers. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. Let's see if we can get this video to 3,000 likes. I think the original video, I did actually review the original Senua Sacrifice all the way back in 2017. That's actually shortly after I quit my job and started going full-time on YouTube. I gave that game a 9.5 out of 10. How weird that the sequel would be 10 times worse. I mean, I definitely did not predict this timeline, but yikes. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.